All right, good day, everybody. This is Emar Substitute. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're broadcasting on March 15th, 2021. Hope all of you are well and safe out there. On today's broadcast, we will break down Georgia Tech's win over Florida State to win the ACC championship, the tournament at least, and their spot in the NCAA tournament and other news and notes from that sport. We'll look at the rest of the bracket, have some initial thoughts on what's going on there. We'll transition to Georgia State football. They have opened up spring practice. We were able to catch up with Shawn Elliott about his expectations for the next few weeks as he prepared for the 2021 season, the fall portion of the season at least. We'll then move on to Original Free Kick. We were able to attend the presser of Josef Martinez, the former MLS MVP for Atlanta United. He is recovering from his ACL knee injury, and he had a lot of things to say on that. And then we'll wrap the show with Miscellaneous Department, maybe some news and notes in the world of sports that we just want to touch on as we do our broadcast. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to thesportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes, and wherever you get your audio and video content, including podcasts. Go to those sites, and that is a great way to keep track of everything that we're doing. All right, let's go straight to the technical state of Georgia athletics and college basketball. Yeah, we watched the game with Georgia Tech men's basketball, and the first time in 28 years, fourth time in program history. The Yellow Jackets are the ACC conference champions. They won the tournament this past Saturday on March 13th with an 80-75 victory over Florida State. The Yellow Jackets beat Florida State, who were the second seed in the tournament, 13th ranked overall in the nation. Big night for Georgia Tech. MVP Michael Devoe, the tournament MVP. He was one of four Jackets in double figures. He had 20 points in the victory. By the way, Georgia Tech was the fourth seed in the tournament. Before we get to the specifics of the contest, let's hear from Josh Pastner, head coach of the Yellow Jackets, on the victory.
It was humongous, Kelly, for Georgia Tech. The exposure, the publicity, the recognition. I mean, it was obviously the largest audience we've played in maybe since Georgia Tech was last in the Final Four. I mean, really, I mean, it's the amount of audience, and you think, obviously every hotel, restaurant, or bar, or whatever, all across the country, it's on ESPN, and so. And we were the prime time game, and to be able to do that it was incredible for Georgia Tech. Incredible. There was a watch party in McCamish with the students. Kelly, we didn't shoot the ball well, but we only had 7 turnovers, and we've done. How about our improvement from last year to this year in taking care of the ball? And we forced Florida State into 25 turnovers. Our defense, our switching of defenses, our hand activity just made a world of difference.
And that win for Georgia Tech, they earned a automatic bid into the NCAA tournament, which we'll get to in a moment. It's their first NCAA tournament bid since 2010. So of 11 years for one of, and I wanted, and I was debating this as well. I listened to some other people and thinking about it, about if this is a premier program, is it a national power, things along those lines. But I will say this for any program in the Power Five conference to not be in the NCAA tournament in 11 years is darn near impossible to achieve that mark, especially when you consider Georgia Tech, who's had past success and has the recruiting base that it has in Metro Atlanta or just in the Southeast in general. 11 years between bids is very hard to believe, but that's the reality of what they did. And as the 2021 ACC Championship was their first since 1993. They also won the ACC title in 1985 and 1990. Devoe, him winning the MVP, is the fourth Tech player to earn the award, joining Mark Price in '85, Brian Oliver in 1990, and James Forrest in 1993. Which was their last ACC tournament title. But here is Michael Devoe, the MVP, on the ACC championship.
Just a lot of emotions, joy, happiness, everything. I mean, this goes down in history for us. It's been a journey for us as a team, me individually, everything. So for us to win this and people counted this out and just staying down and staying with us and staying as a brotherhood, is so surreal for me. For sure. For us, I feel like every game we get better. We learn new things when we watch film and just see what type of play style we need to play, like how our energy level of certain games are not where we need to be. So for every game, I feel like we get better. So we just got to continue that. Right now, it's not the end of our story that we're writing, and we just got to continue it.
The biggest takeaway you can have from that contest is the defensive effort of the team. Now, as mentioned, four players were in double figures for Georgia Tech with Devoe, Jordan Usher, he had 15, Moses Wright, he had 15, the ACC Player of the Year, and Jose Alvarado, the defensive MVP or defensive player of the year in the ACC, he had 13. But as I mentioned, that defensive effort was really the thing that stood out for Georgia Tech. They forced Florida State into a season high 25 turnovers, which included an ACC Tournament championship game record, 15 steals. And off of those 25 turnovers, the Yellow Jackets were able to score 31 points. That was a major difference in the contest. And Alvarado, as I said, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, he had 5 steals in the contest. Here is Alvarado on the victory.
They're a very good team. We knew that. We knew that coming in. We knew that it's going to be a fight, but we also knew that we could beat them. You know, it wasn't just by accident when we beat them at home. We watched the film. We studied what we needed to do, and it was going to come down to a match game and taking care of the ball, matching energy and take care of the ball, and that's what we did. And you know, guys made tough shots at when we needed them, and hey, and we played good defense. It was just a team effort, and I'm glad because my team deserve it.
And with that win, Georgia Tech, as I mentioned, is back in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2010, and for the 17th time in program history. The Jackets, they are the 9 seed in the tournament, and they're going to face the 8 seed Loyola of Chicago, who are the Missouri Valley Conference champions. And the interesting thing about this tournament, if you're listening to this, you already know the entire tournament is taking place in the state of Indiana, and really specifically around Indianapolis. Now, the first few rounds of the tournament are going to be in different locations in the state. I think Bloomington, Indiana, where IU is, Indiana University, they're hosting some contests. I think Hickle Fieldhouse, where Butler plays, they'll be having some contests and all around the area. But ultimately, I think everyone is staying in Indianapolis and it gets busing to the different sites. But Georgia Tech is going to be playing on Friday, March 19th. I think the game actually was announced since we did our outline. It's going to be, I think, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think it's going to be at the field house. I said where Butler plays. So we'll be following all of that. And the winner of that contest will get the winner of the 116 contest. The top seed is Illinois, who just won the Big Ten championship yesterday. And the 16 seed is Drexel, the champion from the Colonial Athletic Association. And so that'll be the matchups that Georgia Tech can look forward to if they're able to get past Loyola Chicago. But here is Josh Pastner on the victory for the Jackets in the conference tournament and preparing for the winning the ACC and preparing for the NCAA tournament.
First time in 25 plus years, 26 years, so just really, really proud of our young men. And it's great for Georgia Tech. Loyola Chicago, really good basketball team. Porter Mosier, one of the best coaches in the country, and also one of the best guys as well too. I've known Coach Mosier a long time. Their teams are really, really good, very disciplined. They defend like crazy. They run great stuff offensively, and we'll have to be playing at a very, very high level if we want to have an opportunity to win the game. Well, look, I mean, we got a tough matchup in the 8-9 game with Loyola Chicago. That's tough enough. And then you're playing a 1 seed. If you're, a winner, assuming that if the 1 seed Illinois wins, you play them if you're fortunate enough to win the game. Look, if you're not the one, I mean, it is what it is. I just wanted to get in. Um, we are the ACC tournament champions, but it's probably a fair seed, the way I look at it. I mean, kind of probably where we ranked with the net rankings and things like that's probably a fair seed. I mean, we were going to be anywhere between 7 and 9, I felt. I think us winning, we would have probably been a 10, maybe 11, but I think us winning last night moved us to the 9 seed.
All right, now is Josh Pastner with his thoughts on everything. I'll do my bracket breakdown on my Wednesday show. But I think that the biggest things you have to look for with the NCAA tournament, and I'll get to Georgia Tech in a moment, but since I have the rest of the bracket, it's a crapshoot, honestly. It's the favorites you have to assume in some order. Gonzaga undefeated throughout the entire season. They have some very impressive wins throughout the year, not only within their conference, but they beat Iowa non-conference. I believe it beat Oklahoma State non-conference as well. So teams that are pretty solid. Obviously, I think the Big Ten has a really solid duo in Michigan and Illinois. Now, Michigan is dealing with some injury issues, but I think they could be a team that can make a run. Illinois, we saw what they did yesterday, beating Ohio State in overtime in the Big Ten championship game. They have a very deep team. They're playing very, very strong. I think those are some teams that you really want to look at as quality teams. I know some Oklahoma State's getting some love with Cade Cunningham, who's probably going to be top 2 or 3 pick in the NBA draft. You gotta be careful with those type of teams though, because if he's and Oklahoma State's had they're up and down. They can if they're rolling and Cunningham is doing well, they could beat any team in the nation. But when you're so reliant on one guy, especially a freshman like that, that's very, very tough to pull off. I know we saw the Syracuse years ago, Carmelo Anthony do it. And now they had Warwick and a solid point guard in McNamara to balance him. I don't know if Cunningham even has that availability or that amount of talent around him. But so I think you got to be careful with those teams that rely on one person. I think that the tournament is in a very tenuous spot though right now because I know they have Virginia and Kansas in the tournament at this moment. Those teams had to pull out of their conference tournaments, the ACC and the Big 12 respectively, because of positive COVID tests. I know they have 4 teams on standby that if one team does test positive have to leave the tournament, they could be filled in. But I think we're gonna, and that's only for the first round though, as we're recording this show. I think we may see a Sweet 16 matchup get canceled, or a Lead Eight, maybe even a Final Four. It's gonna be very, very tough, and I know they're trying all the precautions and everything that's going on with isolation and quarantines and everything like that. But I think it's science. It's something you just cannot avoid completely. Not everyone's vaccinated. Not everyone is uh, in a situation where the cure is. I know there's as I mentioned, the vaccine, but someone's infected, and one thing and one of these teams, you just do the numbers, do the mathematics of it, and I think it's gonna make for the cancellation of a game, maybe even more during this tournament. I don't want it to happen. None of us want it to happen for 2 reasons. One, you don't want people to be infected with it and you just worry about their health and then the rest of their team and the coaches or whoever their circle is. So you worry about the individual and being sick. And then two, you don't want even the most ardent fan doesn't really want to see their team just get advanced to a Final Four or advance to the next round of the tournament. You want to see your team compete and win. Now you take it because those are the circumstances, and if you're doing your I mess myself up even saying that if you do your job, you won't catch the disease or catch the virus. But I know personally, and know from other people that were very ardent, very stringent, and following all the protocols, and still contracted the virus. So it's not like these guys are trying to get the virus, and they're doing the opposite of it. But that's just the way it is. And I don't want to say it's a dark cloud over the entire tournament, but it's something that we have to prepare for. I'm prepared for it to see games be altered and just the impact of it. But as I said, I think and outside, and I should have mentioned Baylor also with teams that. And I know they stumbled in the conference tournament in the Big 12, but they're a team that's been solid all year. And I think if you pick those four teams that between Gonzaga and I should have the bracket in front of me. I misplaced it, but I'm not doing my bracket breakdown yet. But as I said, between Gonzaga, Illinois, Michigan, and Baylor, I think your national champion comes out of one of those four teams. But will they be upsets? Sure. I think you saw in some of the conference tournaments the lack of seeing teams consistently during the regular season really impacted conference tournaments. I think you may see some of that in this tournament as well. You know, there's a lot of talent out there, but we that lack of really consistent non-conference play by a lot of these teams doesn't really give you a good gauge of. You saw them play in conference, but the cross reference how a Big 12 team is going to be do against a Pac 12 team. There's a lack of common opponents and a lack of cross referencing that you can do with that. Even the mid majors, and I think some of them were hurt by a lack of big man. I could say Belmont personally, and very disappointed that as an alum, but just in general, they had the most wins in all of college basketball. Didn't get into the NCAA or the NIT tournament. Not even an invite. Now the invite thing with the NIT is a little tricky because they might. I don't think they were invited. I've done some reading and some research, but there have been some teams that did turn down the NIT bid because of it being it's the same deal as the NCAA. It's just the incentive is not as big, and plus it's gonna be in Texas where it's a very hot COVID area right now, and they're gonna try the same process as the NCAA, but you don't know how good it's going to be. But I think, but yeah, circling back to Belmont, it's just not good with that. But I think what hurt a lot of these teams is the lack of those mid majors being able to face some Power Five teams, Power Five conferences, and you know they throw the Big East in there as well. I think that's a pretty solid big basketball conference. I think you just add all that up together. Some of these teams that were mid majors that did not make it just did not have a chance to play a lot of these contests. But we'll see what happens with the tournament and everything that goes on from there. Let's move on to Georgia State football. They are actually starting. They started some practice last week, but I was not unable to touch on it, so we'll do it right now. They're going to practice through April 16th, which is a few Fridays from now, when they'll have their spring game. But we were able to catch up with Coach Elliott and speak with him about just spring practice and what he's looking forward to.
Well, good morning to everyone, and the sun's shining. Temperatures are rising, and I think they hit the 70-degree mark last Sunday, so it's time for spring practice. Our team's been working out right now for about 8 weeks, and they're ready to get back on the field and start practicing some football. So we're heavily just anticipating the return of ball next Tuesday, and everyone's kind of thrilled to death, and our coaching staff and our players are as well. Spring's always a little bit different because you don't have that competition that's kind of hanging over your head, and you kind of be loose, and you go out there and not only integrate some different schemes and do some different ideas, but you can see different players as well. And that's what it's all about, is seeing some young guys step up, mature, and compete to kind of step in that 2 deep rotation and see where they can become and see what our team can become.
Now, Elliott does return 22 starters from last year's squad, which had a second straight winning season. They were 6-4, and they won the Lending Tree Bowl, a nice 39-21 victory over Western Kentucky. With this large veteran group, it does change the approach to spring practice.
Well, sometimes when you got a lot of unknowns, you have to go in with a little bit different approach. Maybe for whatever reason, from a physical standpoint, you got to see if players can become physical out there in a competition setting against one another. whether it's in a skill position or an offensive or defensive lineman. With so many returning starters, we've seen their physicalness or the physicality part of their game, and we kind of know, so we can lean more on more individual time, really solid fundamentals, and move forward with that. But in the same sense, we do have a lot of younger guys that haven't played that need to step up, and then we'll emerge. And we're going to have a little bit of both. But I think we're finally to a point where we can step back and let some of these older guys kind of take a back seat in spring practice a little bit, not get as many reps, keep their bodies fresh, and really focus on our younger players now that we have the depth that we need.
And out of those 22 starters, all 11 on the offensive side are coming back. And this is an offensive unit that averaged a school record 33.3 points per contest. And the leader of that was Quad Brown, Cornelius, the rising junior from Alabama. He took over the starting QB spot in the fall, and he had 17 passing touchdowns, 7 rushing scores in 10 contests. He was MVP of that Lending Tree Bowl. As I mentioned, they defeated Western Kentucky in that contest. I thought that he would be the automatic starter coming into this season, but Coach Elliott has some other thoughts on that.
Well, you say solidify. You have no idea what's going through a young man's head. We still have to go out there and compete at every position. Of course, Quad has the upper hand, having started all of a year ago, but you got Michaela Calacerdo, that's going to be pushing him right there. You got Granger that's transferred in now. So there's going to be some real good competition. Quad's not a guy that we're going to be able to sit on the sideline because he's got a year up under his belt. He's not a seasoned veteran like you would like just yet, but it does, it makes us feel a little bit more comfortable than we were last spring, going in with really an unknown at that position. But there's still competition to be had, and we're looking forward to seeing all 3 of those guys go out and work.
And to be fair, you don't want to have a player be content in his spot. And I think that Brown comes in as the overwhelming favorite to start this upcoming season. But there are some other guys that they brought into the program in that quarterback position, including some transfers. So he wants to keep competition open and give everyone a shot. But I think honestly, we're going to see Quad Brown behind center at the start of this upcoming year, but that's a good thing to learn. But also, our 9 starters are back on the defensive end, and they had 35 sacks, which was a school record last year, and that ranked in the top 10 in all of FBS. The also returning for the team is all Sun Belt Conference place kicker Devoe Reese. Here is Coach Elliott on the lessons learned from last season.
Well, if you look at our team from a year ago, with all the distractions and everything that went on around them, they had a real focused mindset. I call it tunnel vision. Sometimes you only see what's exactly in front of you. And I think we developed that, and we really moved forward very nicely. A lot of teams across the country, and even now, if you look at the sports that are being played this spring, with so many things pulling at them from side to side, there's a lot of teams that are looking right and left instead of straight ahead. And I think last season we looked straight ahead, and we didn't have a whole lot of distractions. And that's crazy considering what was out there.
And I said, unlike most years when you have a large amount of graduating seniors leave your squad, you have to replace them. With this year of 2021, players had the option of coming back for another year, so an extra year of eligibility. And many players took advantage of that would have graduated this past year, including Ruiz, as I mentioned, the all-conference place kicker, Shad Gilmore, the all-conference offensive lineman, and many others. But there's still areas of improvement for the team that Coach Elliott talked with us about, and here they are.
All the areas need improvement. I told our guys, I said, it's one of the few times in my career and probably all of our coaches' career that we know exactly what we have coming back. A lot of times when most of your seniors have graduated, you have to really look to younger guys to step up and fill those voids. But we really don't have that right now. We know exactly what we have in that room. We know exactly the potential, or not the potential, but the position, strengths, and weaknesses in each and every grouping on the offensive, defensive side, and special teams. So we just got to go out and improve. We've got to improve our leadership. I told them first and foremost, we have to improve our coaching. And then we got to go improve our playing, and that's what we have to focus on. So it's it's a well-rounded focus that we have with everybody involved. It's not one particular spot or another.
All right, we'll be keeping track of the Panthers all throughout the spring period, and hopefully we can talk to another player or get Coach Elliott again, maybe later on in this month and even into early April. But we'll be keeping track of all of that stuff. Another thing we're keeping track of in the world of Metro Atlanta sports is Josef Martinez, and this is the original free kick portion of our broadcast. The former MLS MVP is coming back from his torn ACL injury, suffered in last February in the season opener for Atlanta United when they went up to Nashville to play that contest, and he suffered the injury. He was out for the rest of the season. Obviously, Atlanta really suffered from that and went from an MLS championship contender to not even being a playoff team. But the good news is Josef Martinez is back on the squad, and here is what he had to say to the media on his return.
First of all, good to see you guys again. I'm not very happy, but good to see you. But I'm working out, and that's a very hard year for everyone, especially, that everything happened this year. But I'm working for a big, I don't know 100%, but I'm working for a big okay in the training, and hopefully be ready for first games. But I'm okay. I'm feeling good. Thank you.
And it's been a long road to recovery that Martinez is still going through. He discussed that with us and how he's handling it.
Steve, it's hard. It's very hard because I know it's a long year, but day by day, mentality is tough. In the morning, I talk with Mario. It's a doctor say I don't want to play anymore because I can walk in that moment, and then in the afternoon I feel okay. Until the next day is another day. So I'm so happy. I miss to be back to the field, to enjoy with our teammates. Obviously, go to the stadium and the people's there and suffer because in the games you can win every day. But I miss play, and obviously I miss to be in the field with Atlanta United.
Now, Atlanta United opens up this regular season in MLS against Orlando City SC on Saturday, April 17th. The home opener for MLS is on April 24th against the Chicago Fire. So this has given Martinez a tentative timeline for his return. He spoke with us about the aspiration.
Bueno, primero de antes de recibir que íbamos a jugar con Orlando, ya recibía puteadas ya. Ya me estaban regañando en las redes sociales. Pero bueno, espero obviamente entrenar a partir de estos momentos, obviamente no solamente para ese partido, sino para los dos anteriores. Obviamente, evidentemente no estoy quizás el 100% trabajando para eso. Y bueno, ya es decisión del cuerpo técnico y de cómo ya uno vaya evolucionando para ese primer partido. Y mi recado es que ya papá volvió. Entonces, que no se alebre mucho.
Once the schedule was released with Orlando as the first game, I already started getting comments on social media about it. But I'm working hard to get back to 100%. It'll be up to the coaching staff. I'm ready for that game, but I'm just working hard to get back.
And we'll be keeping track of Josef Martinez and his recovery. And on our next show, we will play some quotes from him about being the kind of lone survivor from the inaugural season of Atlanta United and having a new head coach or new manager at the helm. So look forward to hearing some more from Josef Martinez about the situation with the team. All right, we're going to wrap up the show, Miscellaneous Department, some news and notes around the world of sports. I saw the passing of Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and it looked like it was unexpected. We Hall of Fame boxer, legendary middleweight champion, a man who slightly before my time, but and it's funny because a lot of sports that I watch, some are that have developed over time. We talk a lot about Major League Soccer and European soccer, things like that. That started for me like in the 90s when I was in high school. But some sports are things that I really got into at a young age, and boxing is one of them. And as I was born in 1981, so I was not exactly going to the book and watching HBO, pay-per-views as a 5 or 6 year old and watching Hagler and Hearns and Duran and Ray Leonard, but I do respect the history of and I've seen all those fights. And Hagler was a man who talked to my older sports fans, older boxing fans, and including my uncle, who's a big boxing fan. Hagler is very respected for a man who a lot of principle. You can argue. I know Bernard Hopkins, I think, surpassed his middleweight defense record, but I would say maybe the best middleweight champion of all time. But as a Hall of Famer, a lot of the accolades that you can possibly earn in the ring. If you see his story, it's very interesting. I like Legendary Nights. I'm gonna reference some things to really get an idea of what he's about. HBO, you can search it on YouTube. It's about 15, 20 years old now. They did a Legendary Nights, about 5 to 7 or 8 of the top fights in the history of HBO, and you have Leonard and Hearns, their first fight. You have Cooney and Larry Holmes, Tito Trinidad and Oscar De La Hoya. Then they did like a 30-minute profile on each of those fights. Two of them that they have on there are on the Hagler and Hearns fight from the mid '80s, and that 3 round fight, the classic, including that the best first round probably history of boxing, at least televised, and the build up to that, and then also the infamous Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard fight a few years later. And each of those got a separate episode. You see his background being from Massachusetts, working in construction. Happened to meet his managers and work his way up, and all the years that he was a maybe the best fighter in the world or best two or three, but just the way he fought was not glamorous, and he wasn't a name or marketable guy, and being ducked by a lot of champions, including Leonard, in an early portion of his career. But and you actually hear from him because after his fight against Leonard in '87, I think it was '87, '88, he disappeared. I mean, he didn't disappear from life, but he moved to Italy. He did some acting, but you didn't really hear much from him at all. And it's not you see a lot of Leonard, you see a lot of Duran, you see a lot of some of the other guys that are they either announced boxing or they're just around. He really led a secluded life for a really long time. So it was he watched that and is like, wow, you actually hear Hagler talk up, currently, and that was very interesting to hear his perspective and how he came up and him winning obviously winning the Hearns fight. And I've watched this fight multiple times. The Hagler Leonard fight, you scored so closely, maybe the most famous close fight in history. But you get the perspective of him. So I highly recommend you check that out. Another thing, Kevin Iole from Yahoo, he's at Yahoo Sports now, the Hall of Fame boxing reporter. He had a really good piece on Hagler and in the second part of his life. You watch the Legendary Nights, you see him in his fighting career. But with the Kevin Iole piece, you learn about his post fight career, his post fight life, I should say, and him finally returning to the United States, living in New Hampshire with his wife, and that's where he passed. The past few days, and he died. He got inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame years ago, but there was some bitterness still there, kind of with the boxing industry. But then he was inducted to the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. Why he was in Nevada's weird, but The fact is, he was there. Sugar Ray Leonard was there. Richard Steele, the Hall of Fame referee of that fight, he was there. They were all together. You saw, say, Leonard and Hearn, and Leonard and Hagler, excuse me, embraced. Uh, Looks like there may have been a mending of the because there's a lot of tension between those two. And Steele was there. They got pictures, and you read the story about how he was the most popular guy there at that event with all these legendary champions from all these years, but he was the man that everyone wanted to go to because his mystique was was tremendous. But yeah, you just heard about his passing and how he was home with his family. I guess he was complained of some health issues, not feeling well, and he died a few hours later, which is a really tough thing to hear about. But legendary guy, you have to show your respects to him. So, but I highly recommend. I'm talking about him, but I really recommend that you look at Legendary Nights about those two famous fights and read Kevin's piece on Yahoo to get a true reference to him and his family. And we're doing our notes, and we do have to include this as well. Drew Brees officially retired from the NFL and with the New Orleans Saints. Few weeks ago, I did a breakdown of him and how his career and how his impact on the NFL. I think you got to look at it from several ways. The ranking, the top 10 conversation, top 15, top 20. Yeah, he's in that grouping. He's in that pairing. Is he top five? Probably not. Top 10, maybe. But you cannot deny he's a Hall of Famer without question. The passing records that he has all time, from touchdowns to completions and things along those lines. But it's a very unique story. He came into the league out of Purdue, kind of really, late round pick, not late, late in the first or early second round pick. So we came into San Diego when I could say San Diego, they were the Chargers back then in San Diego. Came to San Diego, started a few years, kind of nondescript. I mean, he had some moments. I think he even made a Pro Bowl while he was with the Chargers. But I remember watching that game. It was the last game of the regular season. San Diego was not in the playoffs. There was a fumble, and he was going for the ball against Denver Broncos, and pretty much all the weight of the world, or at least in the pileup, on his shoulder. And you thought, man, he was heading to free agency too. And you're like, man, that's not good. You saw how he reacted to it, and then you got the reports of surgery and it's a weak shoulder. He might not even reach the realm of being an average player again, or Pro Bowl caliber player. He did the workout or the medical exam with the Dolphins when Nick Saban was there. They didn't pass him, or they said that very leery of signing him. He ended up going to New Orleans. Pretty much was if not the worst franchise in the NFL, but one of the two or three worst, kind of a last destination. Sean Payton gets there. I remember he was a coordinator with Dallas under Bill Parcells. You get those two together, and they start improving. And then, of course, Hurricane Katrina happens. They have to go to San Antonio. You don't know if they're going to be back in New Orleans. We all know if you live through Hurricane Katrina, just watching it from afar, you know the story of New Orleans and how they had to rebuild from that. So he ends up going back. They ended up going back to New Orleans. Benson, their ownership, they really stayed in New Orleans. I think you can't really save a city, but really, if they had a lot of reasons to leave New Orleans. If you look at the finances of it and how they really were teetering on moving anyway, even before the Hurricane Katrina, there was always overtures about maybe Los Angeles when they didn't have a team. I mentioned move to San Antonio. They had the Alamo Dome already there, football ready. There always rumors about maybe them moving on to there anyway. But in the end, they went back to New Orleans. They ended up winning a Super Bowl. He ends up producing two offensive MVP campaigns, sets all kinds of records, and now New Orleans is looked at as one of as a destination location to be in the NFL, and a consistent franchise, no threat of moving, all the other stuff. So you gotta give him credit in that regard. And you look at all of these shorter quarterbacks in the NFL: Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. All the comparisons are always to Breeze because he's not the first guy that was 6 foot, 6'1", that has been successful, but maybe the most successful. And I say little in football terms, little quarterback and that's in size wise in NFL history. Because that was just not coming out of Purdue. They run a spread offense. They throw the ball all the time. He doesn't have to throw through passing lanes. He doesn't have to look over, big offensive linemen, all this other stuff. He made it work for him. So I think all those guys I mentioned that are currently in the NFL that are in that 6 foot to 6'1" range and shorter, I'll say they already showed love to Breeze already, but he was a man who, and if you look at his contemporaries, and people like to mention, Tom Brady and obviously Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and all those guys are like 6'3", 4" and taller, but he was a guy who, and he did benefit in several ways. He benefited getting together with Sean Payton and having an offensive mind that could work with him, because I'm sure now Breeze put in the work and the talent to make it successful, but we see a lot of times guys get selected or put in the wrong spot or it doesn't work out in their coaching, and that can kill a career. It didn't do that. Breeze did not have to deal with that, so that was good. You got to play indoors. You got to acknowledge that as well. Playing in the Superdome in that offense at least 8 times a year, sometimes even more, at least in the postseason, allowed him to be in some good optimal conditions, for that. But still, tremendous career. I think it was time for him to retire. Now, he's a grown man; he can do whatever he wants. But you look at the landscape. The past 2 years, injuries have really derailed his seasons. He wasn't getting any healthier. I think that everyone looks at Tom Brady. Brady is an anomaly to a lot of stuff. And could Breeze have come back this year and been serviceable? Sure. But I think and I'm sure the compensation would have been really good for him and financially, and pad his stats even more, because I think some of these guys, Brady will probably catch all of his numbers. And so Breeze may enjoy some of the records for about a year or two, and then Brady's going to surpass him. And then some of these other young guys, maybe they'll get to him a few years from now. But I think if you looked at it overall, it just, as I said, he could have been serviceable, but I think that ultimately he would have regressed continually. And I think the health thing is a factor too. I mean, his little kids, and his 4 kids, his 3 sons and a daughter. The oldest one can't be more than 12 or 13. They literally announced a retirement for him on Twitter or on social media. So family, if you're gonna do that, family's a big part of your life. And so I think the subtle message I don't know if it was subtle, but I think the message was, and they get to spend more time with him and they cheered and all happy. The reality is, I mean, the guy is, I'm sure financially he's doing right. He's doing well. And it's not like he's going to be in the poorhouse because he just picked up a job at NBC doing some commentary. So he'll be compensated not as much as he would as an NFL player, but I'm sure the money's well. And he's 42 years old. And look, guys can't play forever. It just he reached a point where, yeah, he sees his family. The money's good. The money's right. He can still be involved in the game in some form or capacity. So why keep playing? So I think that once he comes, because I said the children, the sons and daughter, made the announcement on a social media platform. I'm sure when they do an interview, when he does a sit down with somebody, and he breaks it down a little bit more, the things that I'm saying are going to come out a little bit further. That family is a big part of it, and it's always been a big part. He's always had his family around. We see his children a lot. I think you talk about. He'll discuss that. He'll discuss physically. It's just not. I mean, it's a lot. It's dealing with a lot of those injuries. I mean, they're not life threatening, and I don't think they're going to really alter his life and his lifestyle. But going through that rehab and going through all those things that to deal with, the broken thumb, the broken ribs, just it's a lot to deal with. So he retires, and And probably our next show, we'll break down a little bit more his career and what's been going and where he stands in NFL history. But wanted to acknowledge that since it did come out within the past 24 hours or so that he is retiring. And that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to our broadcast. As always, you can go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. And then you can also subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, wherever you get your audio and video content. And do a search for us, and you will see us. On our next show, we will give a full breakdown of our NCAA tournament bracket. Hopefully, we'll have some more from Mayor from Georgia Tech athletics, and some of the things going on there. We will also hear from Josef Martinez, and kind of part two of his media interviews that he's been giving over the past few days. And I said we'll go into his thoughts on being one of the lone survivors from the inaugural team of Atlanta United and having a new manager. And we'll maybe go into some NBA content as well and NFL news because free agency will have started by the time we have our next show. Maybe there'll be some big signings and some trades and releases that we can break down for you. But until next time, good fight, good night, be safe.